Welcome to Drake Beards from the Porch to the Trail. We are working on getting our podcast up and running on a more regular basis. And from the Porch to the Trail, we are trying to encourage people to get the flock out there. In other words, get out there and enjoy the outdoors, whether it be in your own yard or in the outdoors of hunting, fishing, hiking, and just spending time with your family, camping, and other things. And so we welcome you today. It's Wednesday. Wednesday is our Wednesday uplift, where we usually take some time out of the week and we focus on our spiritual side, because we believe in the whole person. Everybody is made up of body, mind, and spirit, and so we want to encourage people to think and pause for a moment in their lives. Today, I'd like us to think about the Promised Land. The Promised Land. In Exodus chapter 3, we see Moses is called by God, and he's called by God as he has run away after killing a man. He's been living in the desert for a number of years, and he's called by God to go back and lead his people to the Promised Land, a land, as it says, filled with milk and honey. My question is, what is the Promised Land? Yes, it's the Promised Land by God, the land that was promised to Abraham and his descendants. But a land filled with milk and honey, what does that mean? Now, most of us have the idea that, just as the Israelites did, that it was going to be a land that was theirs, that was easy to live in. But we know by the book of Numbers that that didn't happen. Many of them feared going into the land because there were giants in the land. Another problem that I've learned over time is with the Middle East. The Middle East itself is not always the greatest growing ground in the world. There is some good growing ground, but it's a very arid place. They often have droughts. They often have pestilence. They often have the invasion of locusts. And every several years, you see in the Bible that there is famine. To me, that doesn't seem like a very promised land. How could it be a promise if God was bringing them to a place that was going to be constantly this way? Well, far too often, I think we forget the fact that they were to rely on God. They were to learn to be satisfied in what God gave them. And today, I think we experience the same thing. Far too often, we have to ask ourselves, what is our promised land? What is it that we have right now that we should be satisfied in? You see, most of us have this problem of trying to keep up with the Joneses or live in a future. Down the road, I'm going to have this house. Down the road, I'm going to have this thing. Down the road, I'm going to have this car. Down the road, I'm going to have a bigger farm. Down the road, I'm going to have a better hunting stand. Down the road, I'm going to have. But we're always living in this future. For 300 years, the Israelites lived in that future while they were in captivity, living in this promised land of imagination. And when they got there, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. But if we learn that we have what we need and we can be satisfied with that, that's a great, great thing. And here's the thing. That's what happened with the Israelites. They got to that promised land. They had the famines every now and then. They relied on God to pull them out of trouble. But the reality is that they had this promised land because they had an inner satisfaction with something that was their own. Doesn't matter whether it's your quarter acre or half acre property where you have a little garden. Doesn't matter if you get the biggest deer. Doesn't matter if you're hauling in the biggest fish. You don't have to envy your buddy's fishing ground. You don't have to envy where he sneaks off to find those big bass or big trout. You don't have to envy that they have a better tree stand or a better gun or a better bow and arrow. The truth of the matter is, we should learn to be satisfied. Because when we're satisfied with what we have, when the good things come along and we get blessed, they mean a lot more. We can see that a promised land is here and now. It can be where we are, not where we want to be. Now, I'm not saying we can't have some visions of futures. There's always people who rent that want to own. Well, that's a good thing to do. But we still need to be satisfied now. Live satisfied. Because if we keep living on a dream and not on the reality, it can get us into trouble. The Israelites refused at one point to go into their dream. They weren't going to be satisfied with it. You and I can be satisfied. So I want to ask you today, are you blessed? Do you have the food on the table? Do you have your family around you? If you do, then you have the necessities of life. Raise a garden, get outside, do the things you can do. Use public land if you have to hunt. Find a friend or a neighbor or a family member who has some ground that they'll share with you. We don't have to envy. We have to live in the promised land we're given. I hope you're blessed on the journey today, and I hope that you'll bless others on their journey as you get out there.